Great. So we are live. If you'd like to get started, Fayad, please feel free.
Oh, awesome. Okay, thanks everyone for joining us and welcome to our meetup. So I'm excited, I'm ecstatic, I'm a little bit nervous to have you all join us here today. It's been a long time to get us to this point. I think it's been 2 years. I only joined last year. I am the community manager for Atala, but you'll see the wait was well worth it. I come from a corporate background, and when joining this team, it was really uplifting to see the passion this team has for building identity tools. So the team has spent countless hours building this, and they've really put their heart and souls into this. So I'd like to give a shout out to the team if you're on the line. And also like to give a special shout out to someone that I haven't seen in a while. I see he's on the call, Daryl O'Donnell. You've also been extremely instrumental in this too, so thank you for that. Um, okay, so let's get to it. As you may have heard, the Open Enterprise Agent, it's a software agent designed for building decentralized identity applications as well as services. I think what's super important to note here is that it has been built in alignment with W3C standards and Hyperledger's RFCs, such as did exchange, out-of-bound protocol, issue credential protocol, as well as present proof protocol. So what can you expect during this session? Let me share. There we go. So we'll do a little bit of a tech deep dive and explore the inner workings of the Open Enterprise Agent with Bart, and then we'll follow that up with a demo from Javier and Curtis. You'll also be able to see how we empower developers with the agent's developer-friendly approach that makes innovative tech accessible to all. And I think there's no better way than to demonstrate this than a demo again. So special shout out to C-Sign and Blocktrust for joining us from the community. They'll be giving us that demo. And then to wrap things up, we will have Lohan's piece presented on the roadmap. So we'll be looking at the now and what's in store for the future. And I think what's extremely important to mention here is we're all about community. So we want you guys to join the conversation, share your insights, ask questions, and come and network with like-minded individuals. I will be posting a link with the Discord in the chat a little bit later. Bear in mind, this is a light-hearted presentation. Before I hand over to the next person, I just have to have one small request. Please, guys, don't mention anything about the recent Rugby World Cup finals to this presenter. He's a little bit iffy about it. But okay, without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Bart. You'll be taking us through what is the Open Enterprise Agent and its origin story.
Yeah, thanks, Fayad. You had to go there. It hurt. It hurt almost as much as when I was in the stadium. Anyway, so yeah, great to see all of you here. I see some unfamiliar faces. I see some very familiar faces, and some familiar faces from the past. So shout out to all of you for being here. This, like Fayad said, is quite an exciting day. I got the boring part of the show, the talking about sort of, hey, what is Open Enterprise Agent? So I'll quickly go through that, and then we'll get to the good stuff, which is the demo. So what is Open Enterprise Agent? At this point, it is a multi-tenant Scala-based cloud agent with an easy to use REST API. But the goal is a little bit bigger than that because we aim to offer like a full suite of decentralized identity products. So that means that early next year, we will also be putting our wallet SDKs for the web in TypeScript and for mobile, as well as a dedicated Scala-based mediator into this Hyperledger lab. Supporting all sorts of key standards, which sort of sit between the W3C and Hyperledger ecosystems. We kind of cherry picked a little bit, and the purpose is really to sort of build interoperability between sort of the large ecosystems that are out there, which sometimes have very interesting philosophical debates. We try to be pragmatic, but at the same time, we also try to bring in the Web3 community there. So we've originated from the Cardano blockchain as a VDR. But if you sort of realize where we come from, if you can go to the next slide, Fayad, you'll notice that in our repos, you see a lot of Atala PRISM reference. because that's how life started. So this code base is built by the boys and girls at Input Output. They also developed the Cardano blockchain. So really is this Web3 ecosystem that we come from. And the intention has always been to create sort of this two-way bridge between real world identity. So we have a number of people in our team that are really experts on like the real world identity side, and the Web3 ecosystems, which is kind of interesting given sort of where they come from. And we hope that sort of what we build enables developers to get the best of both worlds. So we have a few sort of principles in our foundation saying, hey, if we want to be a suite of products or a platform, if you want to call it, it needs to be easy to appropriate for all sorts of different use cases, for all sorts of different languages, and all sorts of different ecosystems. So that sort of really lies at the heart of our design. It lies at the heart of sort of our REST API, so you can basically pick any language that you're comfortable with and sort of start working with the agent. We also tried, and we're still getting better at it every day, to make it as loosely coupled as we can. So there's a lot of interfaces in the design, hoping that it's sort of easy to maintain over time. We've seen that a number of agents that are out there have really sort of gotten themselves into a little bit of a between a rock and a hard place. Do we do DID-COM2? Do we do DID-PEER-4? Those kinds of things. And we're trying to make something which is easily maintainable over time. And some of the decisions that we've made sort of reflect that. Coming out of Cardano has upsides and downsides, which funnily enough are the same. We're big on being peer-reviewed. We're big on security. So that means that we can't ship anything unless it's audited. And we've taken that on board, even if we sort of go from steward to maintainer, or from owner to maintainer. We want to bring that with us. And I think Lohan is going to tell us a little bit more about that. But the code that we put into the Hyperledger lab has been audited by Kudelski, and it has undergone internal IO security audits. So that's, I think, a very good thing for platforms that sort of aim to provide foundational pillars of identity. Then scalability, we hope to be scalable. We've seen a number of products out in the market that are very well for proofs of concepts, but are hard to scale beyond that into real production cases. And we've taken some choices, Scala as a language being one of them, to really try to ensure that this is going to scale and sort of have a high degree of use in production. We're also bringing some IO R&D. I've let the term here universal anonymous signatures. You're going to be hearing a lot about that next year. It's really cool because it's based on all sorts of standards, but it allows you to do selective disclosure by a third party, provided it meets certain sort of immutable governance needs. And that's a really, really cool thing, which we feel unlocks a whole lot of use cases where, on the one hand, you want to have anonymity, mostly in like the Web3 cases, and on the other hand, you want to have auditability and making sure that people are compliant with whatever the use case requires. So that's sort of our foundation. And then the last one, which I think this whole move towards Hyperledger reflects as well, is we're building this for the community, but we're also community members ourselves. And we really want to sort of bring it together and make sure we build with the community. Next slide, please. So talking about communities, we're trying to bring these different communities together, right? Which is really, really interesting, because Web3 communities, they're all about self-management and privacy or anonymity. And the goal is really lofty in a way to say, hey, we want to build like more equitable systems for society. it can go a little bit in the anarchistic spectrum. It can also be a little bit more realistic when it comes to sort of like current systems. And SSI communities have really been building solutions for years, which have a lot of complementarity in terms of the types of problems that they solve. And what was funny, because I started out in the real world identity community, then moved into the SSI community, and then moved to the Web3 community, was that the Web3 community was talking about a lot of things that the SSI community had no idea of sort of existed, and vice versa. So when I joined, there were a lot of talks, and in some cases with other teams that I see, there's still talks about like on-chain identity. It's like, guys, the SSI community has solved this problem like 7 years ago. So we feel quite strongly that combined, they really could offer like the next step in building this next generation of what we call software-defined trust infrastructure. So we tend to ask ourselves like a lot of questions and think, hey, what is it that digital identity can bring to Web3, especially if it goes beyond like the KYC use case that sort of everybody keeps talking about. But also, what is it that Web3 can bring to digital identity? There's lots of interesting governance structures in Web3 that really could be helpful for digital identity in the next generation. If I look at, for example, EIDAS 2, which is going on right now, what you see, what has started out as like this really forward and progressive movement towards self-sovereign identity, is really being caught in a net of like traditional trust providers and sort of industries that have a lot to lose. And I feel a little bit more of the Web3 ethos could bring a whole lot. So we hope that jointly they really can bring significant change to the world. Next slide, please. And in a way, Fayyad mentioned this. This is really a continuation of our journey. So bear with us, because yes, we've been working on this for close to 2 years, and credits go out to a lot of people, many of which are in this call. But it also started inside this company. So for us, moving towards working in the open, it's not as straightforward. It's super easy to begin an open source project if you started as an open source project. If you started as a project in a company, there's lots of dependencies when it comes to, hey, we use Jira to track our issues. How's that going to work with the community? And so we're trying to figure out a lot of those things as we go. And we thought the best way to sort of figure that out is just to get started, and try to have rapid feedback loops and then sort of learn from that and improve. So you'll also find references to Atala PRISM in our code base and documentation. Those will be updated as we sort of progressively transition everything into the Open Enterprise Agent Lab. But we thought it was more important to just get it out there and start getting feedback and start getting people to work on it, than it was to wait and make sure that like everything is perfect, and then there's like this one neat package and everybody was like, oh, well, great, but now what do we contribute? So bear with us. Call it out if you see something, if you think it needs improvement. We have bi-weekly maintainer and contributor calls. We have a Discord. There's a Hyperledger Discord as well. And otherwise, just raise issues and PRs via the repository that we have on GitHub. You're all very welcome. This is the moment where I sort of, being technically responsible, get a little bit anxious about the issues and things that are getting raised that are going to totally derail our planning. But don't let that hold you back. Let's get in the conversation, and let's make sure we make this a good continuation of our journey. And now for the good stuff.
Thanks for that, Bart. Yeah, now for the good stuff. I'd like to hand over to Javier and Curtis.
Yes. So I would like to start by thanking, obviously, the whole team, because it is a little bit unfair that there's only Curtis and myself showing what we are about to show, and it is worth mentioning that without the rest of the team that it would have been impossible, and this is a success of the whole squad, not on individuals and stuff like that. So yeah, having that said, let me just try to share my screen. Hopefully everything will be as we expected. Cool. Then I will start initially by sharing our documentation portal, because I think it is one of the first things that you guys are going to land on, and I wanted to make sure that it is properly explained and shared. So yeah, in the presentation PDF, you guys have the URL for these doc sites, but in general, we have a lot of tutorials and documentation about the simple concepts and the different components that we have. Together with that, we have simple tutorials that are speaking about concrete flows like issuance, establishing a connection, verifying, creating a credential definition, creating schemas, and so on. As a third step or third block, we have API documentation, which is describing like a Swagger API docs or something like that. And then, yeah, we are planning to even improve this even further, so you guys can run the API calls from here directly. But meanwhile, this is what will help you understand what input fields you need to be sending to create, in this case, the verification policy, and in the other case, how to receive or what data you would expect to get in exchange. Then getting into a little bit more detail, if you want to know about the ADRs are the architecture decisions that we are taking, and you guys can see the reference and the backtrack of all the decisions that we took since we started, and also the presented spec, which is already approved in the repository, and yeah, it's also documented there. Then lastly, I would say that, as I was saying, this is for the Open Enterprise agent, which you can see in this side here, the Prism mediator, the Prism node, and the cloud agent. If we would understand what is the typical interaction in self-sovereign identity, we would have the verifier, we would have the holder, and we would have the, I said it in the opposite order, but it doesn't matter. We would have an issuer, a verifier, and a holder. The holder is the one that obviously receives the credential. The issuer is that entity that has been registered in a publicly verifiable place, so that whatever that person or that issuer is issuing you as a customer or as a holder, some other verifier is able to verify that without having to reinvent the whole wheel. So yeah, having that said, there is the Open Enterprise agent, which is what we already presented. Its role is to become an issuer or a verifier in the self-sovereign identity flows. Then how do SDKs communicate, or how does the holder communicate with the Prism agent? Keep in mind that a browser is something that you can turn off in 5 minutes. So we need the mediators to be able to capture messages for that web wallets or that mobile applications while they are charging their phones or whatever they are doing. That's the role of the mediator. It's the Prism mediator, which is its own repository and it's self-documented. Then, okay, we know that the Prism, the Open Enterprise agent speaks with the holders through DITCOM protocol and through the mediator, but also the different holders can speak between each other by only using the mediator. Okay, having that said, I think we are going to directly jump into the main entry point of this whole documentation. While we are constantly trying to improve and minimize some errors, I think that, yeah, it is in a good shape right now. Again, with some constraints on the mediator, but overall things are working really well. And I will just go through the different steps that we have. So yeah, it is basically explaining your scenes. So starting from cloning the repository, deploying and instantiating your own environment, declaring your variables here, then it is telling you what command you need to be running. It is also guiding you on the API calls that you need to run to issue, verify, or connect with the holder and the Open Enterprise agent. And now, without wanting to bother you with like boring stuff, like the one, not boring, but you know what I mean. I think that we want like visual stuff to be happening. So what I'm going to do is basically go through this demo, but myself and a little bit faster, because if not, it wouldn't we wouldn't have enough time. So yeah, here I have all the API calls already prepared. Just as a single click, I will send the API call that I need. And then in this command, I have the Open Enterprise agent with the specific command of the quick started guide. I am going to basically deploy and download the images right now. And meanwhile, what we are going to do is to save us a little bit of time, we are going to be using a mediator that we already have deployed, which is the beta mediator. And together with this, while the thing loads, I am going to start the browser demo. Okay, cool. As soon as this builds, this is like a reference wallet implementation. Okay. And here, the first step is establishing the connection with the mediator and establishing the mediation exchange and knowing in order for the mediator to know how to deliver you the messages. So we are going to just start the connection. Then the first thing that we should see here as this is confirming is that every time we start the agent, I am sending myself a message. So this basically confirms that the mediation has been done correctly. And now I am going to go through the creation of each one of the steps. So yeah, the first thing that we are going to do is establish a connection with that mediator, with that Prism agent, sorry. That is done through this API call. Okay. I'm going to just clone the invitation URL and paste it here to establish that connection. Then this is the first step where we are storing. Then some things are happening behind the scenes. The mediator, sorry, not the mediator, the Prism agent has detected that we accepted connecting with them. And this is the message from the Open Enterprise agent confirming that the connection has been properly established. Then you would use this ID that the Prism agent has, the Open Enterprise agent has returned you to know where do you want to issue that credential to. Again, apologize, as Bart has said earlier, it's still difficult for each one of us to not say Prism. But yeah, I swear I'll do an effort on that. So the next thing that we are going to do is start sending the credential offer. Okay, there's one step that we need to do before, the like demo effect, I guess. We need to have a published PrismDit, and because I started with an empty environment, that PrismDit is not properly configured. So yeah, let me first create that one. I created a long format Prism. This is something that if you start a local environment that you will need to do anyways. So it is good to specify it. Okay, we have the DID reference here. And I bet that we can now go to the credential offer that we tried to send earlier. And as you see now, it's not failing anymore. Then well, what will happen here, as you see, is that we are receiving a credential offer through DIDCOM. And then automatically, and to speed up things, the user has virtually accepted that he wants to receive that credential and has responded to the Open Enterprise agent, yes, I want that credential. The Open Enterprise agent has then checked whatever it needs to check and has sent me the credential in a JWT, in the Prism JWT format. So this is basically the credential. Then the credential is not what you would usually share, right? When a verifier is asking you something or to prove something, what you do is you use this piece of code or this credential to generate a proof. So you would never share the credential. Then next step, this would be a verifier. A verifier wants to ask me if I have a credential with this email address, for example. So that's what we are going to do here. Then the request pending, as soon as I understand, we should receive the presentation request. The user then would choose if he wants to share this information with the verifier or not. So the holder always has the power to reject sharing this credential. And then in this stage, there is no message in response. So right now, if we went and checked that presentation ID, it's probably already resolved. I do not have Postman properly configured here, but yeah, we have proven it works. So here, the verifier is already capable to determine that this credential is valid or not. Then this is just one of the examples. It's Prism JWT. We are about to integrate an encrypt really soon, which means that we are including selective disclosure, zero knowledge proof, and privacy preserving credentials. So yeah, that's where the whole demo ends. Again, I want to thank and make sure that we understand that this is not about the wallet SDK in TypeScript. There is so much effort that every single of us have done in the past year that it's really worth thanking everyone and repeating that if we need 3 times or 4, it's okay. So yeah, open to questions, feedback, or any other comment that you guys need.
Maybe just one addition to what you just showed. I've had demos in the past where sometimes you get the feedbacks like, yeah, it's a shame that it sort of like I didn't see what was actually happening. But what you saw was live. And one of the things that we set out 2 years ago, and Tony and Daryl, if you're listening, we wanted to go to first credential issued in under 5 minutes. I think you did it in 3, but I think it shows as well that there's a lot of care gone into things like the quick start guide to help you get started really quickly. There's a lot of heavy lifting in the reference implementations and in the SDKs, but there's also an ability to dig deeper and sort of make changes if you want. So yeah, hats off, Javi, to you and the team. Jim, you have your hand raised.
Yeah, so real quick question. So I've worked with, I'll call it some of the other projects in Hyperledger around identity. And so I'm curious, I don't know sort of you went through a nice sort of overview of what you've done, but I'm not sure what, in a sense, the origin of the project is, given the other frameworks that already existed. So if I look and I say, okay, here's, Hyperledger Aries, here's VonX, which is another open source solution, and I'm trying to build what you already have, I'm going to say, gee, those are already available. For some reason, you chose not to use those as a starting point, even though they're open source, and said, no, we're going to rebuild this from the ground up for some reason. And I wasn't clear on that.
Yeah, so there's a couple of reasons for that, and I would say some are probably better than others. I think what we saw when we made an analysis of the landscape was that there are indeed very good solutions out there, but they all come with their own set of trade-offs. And the more mature that they become, the more difficult it would become to sort of deal with some of those trade-offs. And to give you an example, there's now a discussion ongoing in the ACAPI community on whether or not they should support DITCOM 2. That has been going on for a while. Being a opinionated Web3 tech company, where we came to was like, we really like some of the things that they did, but we don't like all of the things that they did. We wanted to build something that was more loosely coupled from the ground up. We picked Scala for, I would say, purposes of scalability and sort of concurrency, especially sort of when building distributed systems. Seems like a sensible thing to do. And we didn't want to necessarily have, and I think this comes with our Cardano background, so excuse me, to be sort of dependent on Indy. And I think a lot of the agents are still have more or less of a dependency on Indy, even though that part is also sort of being open sourced. And all of those things combined sort of led to saying, hey, let's sort of build something which adds something which worst case sort of helps sort of bring a slightly different perspective of like Web3 communities into the identity space, and sort of best case provides a lot of interoperability and actually contributes some of the things. So a lot of the people in our team have also started to sort of contribute in the mediator working groups on the non-creds specifications. So we're hoping to sort of participate, and then it's always good to have some skin in the game and saying, hey, we want to have something that sort of does justice to our vision, and start there, and then see how that plays out.
Okay. All right. So I guess I wish your team a lot of luck with that. What happens is, as you know, in the space, there's many other, I'll call it SSI implementations out there, not just the Hyperledger ones, of course. And so the challenge of it is for the rest of the world, when you look at the enterprise level and say, what are we going to use? We don't tend to want to lean into, I'll call it, bespoke implementations of something. Yeah. That's all. And so to your point, what's probably great about what you've done is it's, I'll call it fit for purpose. So in the sense that you already had a set of use cases in mind, otherwise you wouldn't have done this. So you have a set of use cases, and you had, I'll call it an environment that those use cases make sense. So my suspicion is all of that has high business value immediately. Do you know what I mean? Something you can realize in the short term, which is excellent. That, in a sense, makes the investment worthwhile. The other side of the coin is on the enterprise side, when we look at identity solutions and say what's out there. Open source is good. What's better is if you have, standards compliance, and you did point out that did come to, questions. There's a bunch of other things like that. And then beyond the standards compliance is, in a sense, the ability to leverage and extend the existing work out there instead of going back and rebuilding the whole foundations again. So the enterprise side is much more complex, where I think the, I'll call it fit for purpose business goals, which probably really fit well with, as I said, what I think you're doing, are going to pay off quickly for you. That's my guess.
I tend to agree with you. I think I think you're right on. It's a fine balance. One of the things we've really tried to do is make interfaces in our design. So to your point, saying yes, we have an initial set of use cases that we see that come mostly from the Web3 space. At the same time, we've made some decisions so it's easy to appropriate for other use cases as well. For example, one of the things we've done is centralize all our cryptography throughout the agent, but as well as the mediator and the SDKs, so that should you require a NIST compliance stack, you could sort of switch those out relatively easy. And I don't want to hand wave anything with cryptography, but the setup is there to make that easy. At the same time, we've started by linking the Web3 ecosystem to the digital identity ecosystem, or the SSI ecosystem more specifically. The next step is sort of expand that further in the I would say the regulated identity space. So OpenID Connect, OpenID for VC, and stuff like that. They're all on the roadmap. And we'd love to work with the community now to sort of say, hey, let's figure out where this needs to go to be easily maintainable, highly performant, and sort of easily appropriated for whatever use case beyond the initial set of use cases that we have.
Okay, and my guess is from what you described, you were using OpenAPI as the driver, I guess, to generate the microservices for your platform. Maybe I'm wrong on that. I don't know, but I had that impression that you were using OpenAPI.
Externally we do. Internally, it's slightly different. But for all intents and purposes, we have a nice REST API, which is an OpenAPI specification. That will help you drive pretty much any integration that you need.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Patrick.
Hi, great presentation. That's very good. So I come from the DevOps where I work, and I come mostly familiar with the, obviously, Hyperledger, ACAPI, JavaScript, and some of the W3C standards, being the verifiable credential and the VC API. My question for you is, in your presentation, you claim that your solution is built around open standards. Do you have a way to demonstrate this? I know what I mean by this is different communities, they have these test suites and test harness available for you to sort of demonstrate that you have implemented these standards, especially on the W3C side. Have you ran any of these test suites, or what's your approach toward quote unquote claiming that you implement these open standards?
That's a totally fair question, and the answer is in some cases we have, and in some cases we have it planned, but we haven't yet implemented it. So for a mediator, for example, we've actually created a test suite together with the diff working group, and we have a number of mediators in there, and we're sort of expanding that test suite. For the agent side, the initial aim was to look at the Aries test harness. We haven't done that yet for a number of reasons. Complexity of running it was one of them, but also just sort of from a priority perspective, we just haven't gotten to that. But it's definitely sort of on the radar to do, because I've been in a number of these plugfests, and I think, as anybody in the SSI industry knows, like it's easy to make a spec compliant implementation. That doesn't mean that it's interoperable. So it's gonna be part of our testing strategy as well, where we sort of basically for every feature, for every endpoint, or for every protocol that we sort of implement, we want to sort of embed that testing sort of at a system level in there, but we haven't gotten around to that level yet.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think what you said is very true. The spec and the version in the field, sometimes you have some interesting discoveries. The
latest DIT peer one is a good example, right? So we have the latest mediator that we have is actually supporting DIT peer 4. Probably it would take us somewhere up to a day to sort of get the whole system on DIT peer 4. The reason why we haven't done it yet is that we want to sort of talk with the community and say, hey, when is everybody making this jump? Because we can be the first, but then you would not be interoperable, and that wouldn't give you a whole lot of value.
Yeah, no, I agree. Like, and that's a bit what I was reflecting, because obviously different frameworks have different ways to make standards and making standardized, and some frameworks, they sort of make the standard before the implementations come, as others, they will wait until you have implementation to finalize it. So it's kind of an interesting different approach. If I can allow like a second quick question, do you have plans for backward compatibility? Like you mentioned earlier about ACAPI supporting only DIDCOM v1, and ACAPI, at least here in Canada, it's fairly used in production by governments and smaller business. Do you have plans for some backward compatibility so that let's say someone wants to join the ecosystem and there's already all these deployments out there, and they would want to choose a solution that will be able to at least still communicate with those. Is that in the plan, or you're sort of waiting for these frameworks to catch up?
Yeah.
Bart, before you go ahead and answer, could we take this question and then say this question last, and then I am cognizant of time. We also got the demo. So cool.
So I'll answer this question. The other questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll answer them there. This one, this is a continuous conversation. In some cases, it makes sense to sort of commit and say, "Hey, the rest will catch up." In other cases, we want to be a little bit more liberal. What I expect, but this is a personal expectation, is that on the verification side of the equation, we're going to try and be as liberal as possible with regards to the standards that we support, or the DID methods, or the credential formats that we support. When it comes to issuance and holders, we might be a little bit more opinionated. So I think that's that would be my general answer. And I would say it's also a little bit up to the community, right? If we all make the leap into a certain direction, but given where everybody is, that is, I mean, the nature of standard work is that it takes a long time. So I guess that's also something that we'll try to figure out with the community to sort of see where does it make sense to be a little bit more backward compatible. Key for us is, which we'll start doing as of next year, is like try to be as explicit as possible in terms of we have a contract first approach to sort of say which version of the contract and which protocols do we support with which version of the agent. But I'm gonna assume that we're gonna have to fine tune that approach over time together with all of you guys.
Awesome.
Up next, what's better than one demo? Having two demos. So now it's for a community demo. I'd like to hand over to Bjorn from BlockTrust to come and present to us. Bjorn, over to you.
Yeah, hi. So try to share my screen. So do you see the presentation?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, so our journey with Atala PRISM, which is now the open enterprise agent. As the others, we will mostly still refer to it as Atala PRISM, and BlockTrust, that's me, and Ed, who is also on the call. So what we're trying to do is not give you like a real demo, because we built so much stuff and it's like hard to fit into the few minutes we have, but give you more of an overview over the ecosystem, what has been mentioned before, and how the things we build fit into that ecosystem. So in the center, there's the PRISM hosted agent, or the open enterprise agent. We have seen like something you can host somewhere in the cloud on your server as a backend, running a Docker, but mostly like having APIs to manage the DID through credentials, like DID communication. And below that is usually a VDR. In the case of the open enterprise agent, or PRISM, is of course the Cardano blockchain. It's still bound to the Cardano blockchain in many aspects, that as the project will evolve, it will support other VDRs. But the agent is not directly writing to the Cardano blockchain. There's something in the middle, which is in our case the PRISM node. And so you would first like connect the agent to the PRISM node. The PRISM node would then write the transaction to the blockchain. Similar, basically, like Hyperledger Indy. So one project we built really at the beginning was the BlockTrust Analytics platform. I will quickly share some screenshots. So you can go there at analytics.blocktrust.dev. And that's a tool more or less like IndyScan, where you can look at the blockchain and see, well, now here's the PRISM transaction written to the blockchain and it's live updated. So you see what's happening on the blockchain and which PRISM transactions are written there. You get some statistics. And also you can make a deep dive and really understand on which block is what written. Here, for example, you see there were DIDs created and a DID updated. And also it gives you like a possibility to do resolving of the DIDs. So this is like one of the tools which wasn't provided by the PRISM team out of the box. And we thought it would be very helpful for developers to better understand what's going on behind the curtain. Another thing which comes out of the box with the Open Enterprise Agent are different SDKs, so that you can build your own wallet, for example. There's the TypeScript SDK, there's the Swift SDK, and there's a Kotlin multi-platform SDK. And we as BlockTrust team took that and also built our own SDK based on .NET and built our own wallet. So we have a small wallet to do, which is 100% compatible with Prism, and like a classical wallet, you know, like to create DIDs, to exchange credentials, and also have a few screenshots, like the browser extension wallet. That's like the main difference to most of the wallets out there, though. You would click like on a web page on the small icon of the browser extension, and the wallet would pop up, and you are able like to manage your DIDs and credentials. And there are many features included, like most of the wallets have. But we have also, for example, chat. So it's based on DIDCOM v2, the basic message protocol. We support a lot of the other protocols, like for exchanging the credentials, discover features, pickup protocol, and so on. But that's a feature that you can chat, and then you can like use, of course, the Prism mediator to send one message to one wallet to another. And that was a very, very short introduction of our wallet, but you can go to our website. We have a video with a few demos with Atala PRISM, how the wallet works, especially a few videos about chat. And also one feature we have in the wallet is like sign in. You could sign in into a website. That's also in the feature set of the Open Enterprise Agent. And one other thing we built is like communication with an AI agent. So you would go to a website and then you click on the small button below, like connect to agent. The wallet would pop up and you can use a DIDCOM v2 connection to talk to an AI agent at a backend service. Well, back to the map, we saw like the Prism mediator. That's also in the package which you get with the Open Enterprise Agent. And as BlockTrust, we also built our own mediator implementation, which mostly helped for interops testing, like getting the protocols right, that everything is working. And the last thing we built is a credential builder. I'll also give you a few screenshots of that, because when you want to demo like SSI in general, and usually you have the example of the trust triangle. It's for people not coming or not having an SSI background, that's often like hard to grasp just seeing it in code. And so we built a nice tool for it, which is basically an UI on top of the Open Enterprise Agent. And it looks like this. So you can go to credentialbuilder.blocktrust.dev, and then there's a small plus icon. And then when you click it, you can set up an agent. So you would maybe host your own instance of a Prism agent, or maybe there's some hosted instance out there. And then you can enter the detail and then connect to the agent, and therefore have an UI to drive the agent. And in the next screenshot, we have 3 agents set up. So on the left is an agent which is basically currently in issuer mode. So you could, for example, like use that agent to connect to another agent, and then create a credential and a schema and issue that credential to another agent, like the middle one, which is currently in holder mode. or you could like have also a third agent, which might be like in the verifier mode. And then you have like 3 instances next to each other and go through the different scenarios, issuing credentials, sending them over DITCOM to another agent, and then the verifier flow. So that was a very, very quick summary what we have built in the last 1.5 years. And yeah, we continue building on Prism. Maybe we get now also a real life demo from another Prism project or community project. But if you're interested in what we're doing and want to contribute or help us out, feel free to get in touch with us. So that's from me. Back to you, Fayad.
Awesome, Bjorn. Thank you for that. It was a great presentation. Like Bjorn mentioned, if you guys do want to get in touch with him, Bjorn, could you maybe share your email in the chat? If you're comfortable with that, and then everyone could reach out to you. Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got another community demo before we jump into the roadmap. John, are you on the line? John and Roberto.
Yes.
Cool.
Hello.
Over to you guys.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm along with John and Roberto. We're part of the C-Sign team. Just want to say thank you all for having us today. We're very excited for the opportunity, and we just want to thank you all for your hard work. But I'll keep that short and pass it off to John now for the demo.
Great. Let me share my screen here. Okay, can everyone hear me now? See? Can you guys see the screen? Okay,
Yep.
Great. Thanks, Matthew, and awesome work, Bjorn and Ed. There's a lot of really exciting stuff coming out of this community, so stay tuned for sure. First of all, thanks so much to everyone at IOG, the Atala PRISM / Open Enterprise agent team, Bart, Fayad, Javier, Tony, Daryl, everyone who's cheered us on along our journey. It's been really, really fun. And David Boswell, great to see you and great to be back in the Hyperledger community once again. Really honored and excited to be here. My name is John, and I'm happy to give you a sneak peek today of something fun that we've built with the Open Enterprise agent. C-Sign is a fully private, end-to-end encrypted platform for signing, certifying, and verifying agreements between parties using self-sovereign identity and blockchain. Let's jump right in and sign an agreement. Now, what you see here is 2 different browsers on the left and the right. On the left, I'm signed in as John, myself, and on the right, I'm signed in as Demo Signer. These are both KYC'd users, and let's jump right in. So let's see, let me do this. Okay. Now, agreements on C-Sign can be anything, documents, images, or other media types. Let's upload an agreement. In this case, I've got my slides for this demo right here, and I'm going to upload them, and I want Demo Signer to review them and sort of sign off on the latest revision. So I'm going to upload them here. Let's see, latest slides. I'm going to give Demo Signer to the 20th to take a look at them. And these are now, let's see, version 4.5. Please take a look and approve. Okay. And now I'm going to add Demo Signer from to the agreement. Okay. So I click add from contacts. Now, what are contacts? Contacts are actually DID peers with whom I've made connections with. So it's sort of like an SSI friends list. I have a cryptographic connection to each one of these KYC people on the C-Sign platform, so I know I can trust them. I'm going to add Demo Signer here. Okay, and I'm going to request a signature. Now, when I request a signature, I'm actually signing the agreement myself and then inviting them to do the same. Our signature protocol uses biometrics to authenticate signers, so you always know you have the right person signing. So when I do this, you can see biometrics. I get a biometric challenge. I'm going to use my fingerprint on my laptop to easily sign and invite. And you'll see over here on the right, it automatically popped up on demo signers screen. And I want to draw your attention right now into the upper right corner, this notification up here. So these are notifications, sort of invites and status on documents. All of these are end-to-end encrypted using DIDComm2, which is also available on the Open Enterprise Agent. So now I'm going to go through, let's say, latest slides. And I'm going to review these and let's say I approve them, fine. I'm going to sign. Again, you can see demo at csign is the user. I'm going to use my fingerprint once again. Boom, I've signed. Back over on the left, I get another notification saying the demo has signed. That's great. And now you can see signature has been verified. And now I can certify this agreement. So I'm going to click this and I'm going to click certify. And then we'll talk about sort of what's going on. Now, you can see here that we are publishing on a blockchain. So what we're doing here is we're taking the public keys of each signer and we're creating a DID document that represents the agreement and its metadata, and we're publishing it to the Cardano blockchain. And then we're going to issue a verifiable credential to each of the signers who participated in the agreement. And you can see here, now it's done. Now let's kind of inspect what we've actually done here. Let's drill in. So I've got all this metadata here. This is great. And I'm going to go to the status and this verified thing. Let's copy this and let's look at the actual verifiable credential we've created for this agreement. If we go to jwt.io, we paste this in. Let's look at the actual payload here and sort of inspect what's happened. Now, I want to point something out here. Right now, for this demo, we are showing a clear text verifiable credential, just so we can talk through it and you can see the contents. But actually, we normally use end-to-end encryption. So the agreement metadata would actually be encrypted, and only the creator and the signers will be able to decrypt and read the metadata. In fact, not even csign can read your agreement metadata. It's all private between parties. But for this demo, let's look at some of what's going on here. So here is the DID PRISM. This is the actual hash of the agreement that gets created. You can see the file name here. Okay. And then we have an array of signatures, which are everyone who signed. So John has signed this here, and here's the date that John signed. Here's the proof. And demo has also signed, and the timestamp and their proof. Okay. Now, if you notice over here, the signatures also say signature verified. Well, what does that mean? So verification is yet another part of csign. And each signature has a cryptographic proof embedded in the verifiable credential, which prove that that person has signed. So for example, if I click this, we can look at this little verify tool. If I go back here and I get my DID PRISM, and let's say I put this in here, this should verify, right? But of course, if I change anything, this will not verify. You can imagine in the future like an API or an interface or something like that, where a third party can verify the validity of an agreement. For example, a lawyer or a judge, if there's a dispute, or that third party could request proof via SSI from all the signers. All right. Now let's go home here. Now, what I also want to point out here is sort of what you're not seeing. With csign, we've been able to abstract away all the complexity of self-sovereign identity into a very familiar web experience. So what you've seen right here is we're actually using SSI identity wallets, DIDs for people, DIDs for things, invites, mediators, DIDComm, verifiable credentials, and even the Cardano blockchain, all on top of the Open Enterprise Agent. And yet any internet citizen could use this without having to know any of that stuff. We truly believe that this is a project for the masses. This is not crypto, this is cryptography. An open enterprise agent gives us the tools to make it useful for all of us. Now I'm going to go to the actual slides that we just looked at and we just approved. Thank you, Demo, for approving the slides. So let's a quick recap. What did we just look at? We saw how CSign uses Open Enterprise Agent to manage SSI identity wallets, cryptographically sign, certify, and verify agreements, write agreement hashes to a blockchain, and issue verifiable credentials. What's coming up? Well, for enterprise use cases, we'll have multi-tenancy support. We'll have a private beta on testnet, going to mainnet in 2024, and there's a lot more planned. I do want to shout out the CSign team directly, Matthew Marino in New Jersey, our brilliant lead engineer, Roberto Carvajal down in Chile, Mal Sam in Berlin, who's created all the beautiful bits that you've seen today. And once again, thank you to everyone who's been involved, the IOG and Atala PRISM team, for always being welcoming, supportive, and responsive along the way. The community is great. Please join the Discord and don't be shy. And if you want to stay updated with us, you can visit us at www.csign.io. You can sign up there to be notified when our testnet beta will be available, or contact us for a more in-depth demo. Thanks.
Awesome, John, that was amazing. I remember when you guys first presented what it's turned into now. That's absolutely amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. John, would you do me a favor and so just pop your contact in the chat as well in case anybody would like to reach out to you for further discussions?
Yes, sure. Please answer questions or ask questions in the chat as well. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Sorry, guys, my video is off. I'm getting a little bit of lag at the moment. Let me know once you guys can see my screen.
I think we lost Vayant.
Yeah, well, we're giving him a minute. It seems like there's a couple questions, or at least one question in the chat. Maybe we can answer. Or maybe it's already been addressed, but I see the question, who pays for the gas fee, and then whoever writes the transactions.
Yeah. So there's a Cardano stack sort of that sits behind this, which requires a wallet in ADA. Whoever operates it, we feel that this is like a more business operations question, sort of who writes the fees. One of the things that we've done, we had an initial version which sort of did a lot more writing on the blockchain. We've progressively sort of moved to touch the blockchain as little as possible, or as little as needed, and make the verifiable data registry interface progressively pluggable. That's not fully implemented yet, but hopefully that will come on the near term, meaning H1 next year. We should definitely sort of make good steps in showing that to you.
Great. I don't see any other. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no. I can share my screen if needed.
Yeah, that'd be great. I don't know if there was more planned, or did you have more slides or presentations, or the roadmap grid stuff. Great.
Yeah. So we have Lohan that can talk a little bit about the roadmap. Lohan, floor is yours.
Hi everyone. Thank you for being here, and it's been quite an interesting journey to get to this point over the last year and a half. But I'll take you over where we are today, kind of high-level roadmap features that are kind of on the roadmap already. And then I'll also kind of talk a bit about the stewardship and the governance of the open source project itself. So where we are today is, as you have seen by now, we have Open Enterprise Agent. It can operate in single tenant mode or multi-tenant mode. It exposes a REST API interface that you can easily integrate within any programming language that you might choose. We have an open source version of the mediator and the various different wallet SDKs. As Bart mentioned, the objective is for all these different components to ultimately end up as part of the Open Enterprise Agent in Hyperledger Labs. Our Open Enterprise Agent is very easy to spin up and to get started, and we have great documentation. I suggest you go and read it and run through the quick start guide to see if you can kind of get it all up and running and have all the components working together. What we have done over the past year, we also now have a W3C compliant DID method. Our DID method is called the PRISM. And we are supporting W3C compliant verifiable credentials as well as multiple credential formats. At the moment, we have available JWT, and soon Anon credits will also be released. We are linking to our current VDR but we are planning to kind of go with an interface approach, as Bart mentioned as well, that will ultimately allow the Open Enterprise Agent to work with multiple DID methods, multiple VDRs in a way that's easily interchangeable or enhanceable for developers and maintainers of the software. One of the things that I think adds a lot of benefit to the Open Enterprise Agent is our cryptographic primitives library. It gives us quite a lot of crypto agility going into the future, and I have a slide on that specifically. And then one thing that we've integrated is we have an IAM integration, so that when you use the multi-tenant feature or custodial wallets, you are basically authenticating into an IAM system. It's currently Keycloak, but we are planning to make that an interface as well. So if you use Ping or Okta or any other IAM kind of system in the future, you can integrate the multi-tenant mode into your existing IAM systems. And then all the secrets are kind of stored and accessible from a HashiCorp vault. So that is where we are today. And Bart, if you can maybe just go to the next slide for me. And what we are going to release soon is a sandbox environment. And the objective of the sandbox environment is really to have a user-friendly testing and experimentation environment. And furthermore, also to obviously run the open source code. And as we make upgrades or add features, etc., that the sandbox environment stays in sync and accessible not only to us, but also to the community as well. Next slide, Bart. So kind of looking from a roadmap perspective, looking a bit into the future, this is definitely not everything that's on our roadmap. We have quite a lot of interesting features and functionality that we are at least ideating on, but it is not set in stone, so I didn't actually add it here. But join the community calls and you'll find out all the magic that's coming in the future. But what we definitely have planned already is OIDC support, adding other credential formats like selected disclosures, JWTs. We already have a version of a universal resolver, but we want to make a universal resolver driver so that other people can also resolve the PRISM DIDs. We had a question about backup and recovery. That is on our roadmap, and to make it as seamless as possible to backup and recover either from an agent level or from the SDK level. And we'll see how we progress on that. That will mostly be a phased approach across the various different components. We also looked at the incorporation of trust registries. So kind of how can we link the agent to the concept of governance? And one of those technical components is normally the trust registry. Decentralized web nodes for storage and extra features and capabilities is also on our roadmap. And then something that I'm excited about that Bart touched on as well is this open interface approach, where we want the open interface or interface approach for effectively everything in the agent, from the DID methods that the agent can support, the verifiable credential formats, what VDR you want to connect to. That is the first step in that approach is we are going to start on the VDRs, and then we will go into the different components to make all those interfaces as well. And one of the things that we kind of identified from very early on is we want to ultimately have Open Enterprise Agent being able to do universal verification, or at least on the methods that it the DIT methods that it can resolve. Okay. I'll just continue. And from a roadmap perspective, I think we're on an exciting journey now, because one of the things is this: we have developed this from within IOG, and obviously now going to Hyperledger Labs, we're going to build a community around it. And the real question is that you will have a big influence. You will have an influence on the roadmap, and if there are things on the roadmap that you want that we might not have, bring it to the community calls, and we can start incorporating these and actually create a public roadmap that everybody not only can influence, but it's visible and usable by anyone who are interested in crypto enterprise agent. Next slide. All right, so from a stewardship perspective, at the moment, well, not the moment, we used to be the owners of the code base. Now that we are moving all of it into Hyperledger Labs, we are moving from owners into stewards. And we have a few principles that we defined that we really kind of want to put forward in terms of trustworthy stewardship. The first of them is obviously developing in the open. So collaborating, discussing, agreeing with the community, what is the best fit, what are the different features and functionality, accountability, etc., that we want to support on the Open Enterprise Agent. We want to communicate and decide transparently with the community, so that there's always a trust relationship with our community, and we just don't build things that we think might be needed, but also listen and bring the things that the community needs back into the Open Enterprise Agent. And then also providing clarity and strong commitments about direction. So meaning, obviously, from an IRG perspective, the Open Enterprise Agent is going to be utilized as a foundational component for SSI into commercial strategies, but making sure that the commercial strategies don't interfere with the open source, and that the open source is kind of always the, I can say, the latest and greatest version of what we are developing and the different features and functionality. Next slide, please. Okay, so a few commitments that we want to, well, that we are already committed to as stewards, is that first of all, the open source is a priority. So any features and functionality would first be released in the open source code base, and then where needed or where we will consume that from a commercial perspective, we will move it into the commercial environment. We also want to make sure that we have feature complete code base, that all the SSI functionality is there for you to use in public or private ecosystems. We don't want to impose any artificial limitations. So the open source code base will have unrestricted usage. You can use it, you can modify it, you can add to it, you can remove from it, you can do with it effectively what you want according to the Apache 2 license. We also do quite a lot of work in terms of security and testing. So all our testing and our benchmarks and everything will be available for public consumption, something that you can use and you can see what is the actual performance of the agent and how it enhances over time. Any security related issues, obviously, we want to hear about them first and handle them internally. And once it's resolved, obviously disclose them in a responsible manner. There will be no exclusivity or non-exclusivity compared to the open versus commercial versions. We will share all our benchmarks and audit, as I already mentioned. Then one of the big things is we want to have the community being a very big part of the governance and also be very inclusive in our decision making. So once again, I invite you to join our calls and really come and raise your voice and kind of contribute and collaborate with us. Next slide. So on the cryptographic primitive library, it's basically a crypto library that we developed that is going to be used across all the different components, the agent, the mediator, the SDKs. And the main reason for that is, first of all, that we can control the crypto agility. If we need to have new cryptographic primitives, we can add them. We can test the cryptographic library ourselves. It will go through external audits or major releases once a year. There will be internal audits of that on minor releases, currently monthly. And it really allows us to, like Bart also mentioned, if we need to start supporting NIST-related cryptography, we can just implement it in one place and utilize it across all the different components. Okay, next slide. And this is really kind of my call to action from a community perspective. This is kind of built for the community, with the community, and ultimately for the community. And what we want to do is we want to create an environment of community-centric collaboration. And we want to leverage the collective expertise of within IOG as well as the community to create and innovate on Open Enterprise Agent and really kind of end up with an enterprise-grade solution that is highly versatile, highly performant, highly scalable, and highly robust. We really want to give you a place and hear your voice so that you can influence our roadmap and what we are planning to build in the next coming years. And then also from a roadmap perspective, there's already been a question from Jim, do we have an open, publicly accessible roadmap? At the moment, the answer to that is no. But this is part of the plan, is to really create this open roadmap that is visible. It's going to be in GitHub, and anyone can basically see it. There will be transparent planning around it. And then we can co-create the roadmap and really have a democratic management aspect so that everybody is well aware of what's happening and when new features are going to be launched and more or less on what at what time frame. And that is a high-level overview of the roadmap as well as our kind of hope for the Open Enterprise Agent from a community collaboration perspective. And that is all from me. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. I think we have Fayad back. If we don't, I'll just take the hands of the Q&A. Sira, do I pronounce that correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. Can you hear me well?
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So my name is Sarah. I'm from Suichies. I'm based in Japan. So I have a few quick questions. So first one, so you mentioned in the beginning of the presentation that you'll be releasing the wallet SDK for TypeScript next year, but we already have access to that repository today. And what exactly will you be adding to the existing repository from now to the beginning of the year?
So it's mostly a governance question, right? So we have the SDK and the mediator that are currently sort of still under IO. Those are public open repos, so you can go into them, you can use them today. But we want to bring it all under the Hyperledger Lab umbrella, so it all has the same governance, and it just makes it much easier to manage as a whole. So the maintainer calls will all sort of contain like the whole suite rather than just the agent. And then for the mediator, you need to go elsewhere, and for the TypeScript SDK, you need to go elsewhere. So we're just trying to centralize that all under Hyperledger, also to make sure that it sort of has the right longevity, sort of the same longevity as the agent has, and we cannot sort of revert back from that from some sort of commercial interest.
I see. Thank you. Thank you. So I believe that the SDK and other tools that you're building will improve the developer experience of Open Enterprise Agent. And can you quantify, if you can, like how much will it improve? Like, for example, like, you know, it used to take 7 months to do this, but now it's like 2 months, etc. Like, do you have any metrics on that?
So we don't have any metrics, but one of the things we set out to do when I had recently joined, which for me was the start of the journey, and the journey was already ongoing by a few other people. And one of the wishes was get to first issued credential in under 5 minutes. Because we used to have a version where that could take up to 7 to 10 days. There's many reasons for that, but I'm very happy to sort of see where we ultimately ended up in a much more standards compliant manner, which also makes the developer experience much easier. I think some of the demos you saw were built by people that have experienced that themselves. I remember a conversation with John, and I don't want to put you on the spot, John, but saying, hey, I had this idea, and sort of over the course of a weekend, I could come a very long way in sort of implementing all of this stuff. And I was actually thinking with too much level of detail about what I needed to implement versus what the SDKs did in terms of heavy lifting. And I think those types of things, that's how we evaluate sort of the ease of use. We're continuously looking at improving that. I would like to make it as self-serve as possible in the end, but ultimately it's also digital identity comes with a certain prerequisite of you need to understand how systems work, distributed systems where there's many different agents and many different SDKs, and sort of they all need to talk to. So you're sitting on the higher end of the spectrum in terms of experience, I think, but still we need to make it very, very simple. And I think the C-sign demo was a very good example of that, of how you can make it very, very simple. And I think we will all win if people don't realize that they're using SSI.
Amazing, thank you. One quick question. So Atala PRISM Pioneer Program, it wasn't mentioned in the roadmap, but now I think it's on pause. Like, what's your plan for education programs?
Education programs will continue. We're currently sort of rethinking that, and part of the reason for that is we need to migrate our entire technology stack. Another part of the reason is also related to the branding. So that was like the traditional Prism branding. So we're trying to figure out how do we make this a consistent whole. If you enter sort of via Hyperledger, sort of how do you get to a Pioneer program? But there will definitely be a new Pioneer program, and I think it's actually set to start quite quickly, early next year, if I'm not mistaken. We'll definitely communicate about that.
Thank you so much for your presentation and all your great work.
Any other questions? If not, then I think we're good on time. We've gained 5 minutes, so I wanted to thank everybody for participating today. I hope you will participate tomorrow, meaning next week. So at the same time as this slot, we have maintainer calls. So next week on Tuesday, and then every 2 weeks. If you're interested, join there. Go to the wiki, go to the Discord. There's ways to find us. Thanks also for C-sign and Block Trust for their demos. Reach out to them if you have questions to them specifically. They're very, very awesome in showing what can be done. So we're very grateful that people are starting to use the Open Enterprise Agent, because it's also those kinds of use cases that learn us the most on sort of like what are the things that are required to make this a good experience for people to build something which provides value to their customers, to society at large. And that's ultimately our goal. So I'm going to say goodbye. And hopefully we see you all next week, or in the near future. And if not, I wish everybody a very good December. It's a good month for reflection and introspection. And then as of January, you can start the building again, hopefully building some awesome SSI technology. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. I'll send an email out with the recording and the other links that were covered today. And thanks for joining us. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. See you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right.